Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Kevin Blekicki Show. This is episode number 55. It's been a while. It's been about a month since I've done a Kevin Blekicki show. I have posted some videos on the YouTube channel, but it's been a while since I've done a podcast. So we're getting back into the swing of things. We have a great show for you this week. We're talking about the New York Mets. They are coming off a 12-game losing streak, which is their worst losing streak since 2002. That was 24 years ago. So it's been a while since the Mets have had a streak this bad. We'll get into it. We'll get into my thoughts on how I think that the rest of the season is going to play out. After losing those 12 games, they have won the last two games in a row. So they have a winning streak after that long losing streak. And the Mets have actually won a series against the Twins. So we'll get into that. We'll also break down the transfer portal in women's college basketball as South Carolina, coming off of back-to-back national championship appearances, has reloaded again. They went through the transfer portal. They've got some big recruits. We're going to break down what went on in South Carolina and my excitement for this team moving forward. And of course, it is also the weekend of the NFL draft. We'll get into my reactions to the Jets picks on the first night and the first round of the NFL draft in 2026. But first, let's start off with the Mets. Jesus Christ, this team is absolutely awful. I mean, the only thing saving them right now is the fact that the Phillies are even worse. They've lost 9 in a row, 14 of their last 17 games, and they are tied with the Kansas City Royals for the worst record in Major League Baseball. The Mets have the second worst record in the National League, so we're bad, but at least we're not the Phillies. So the Mets were making, of course, national headlines. And of course, it even got so big that it got to First Take. They were talking about baseball on First Take when you have the NBA playoffs going on, you have the NFL draft going on, the Stanley Cup playoffs are happening as well, but we know that ESPN doesn't care about hockey. So so the fact that the Mets were able to make national news and be talked about on First Take is quite impressive to be that bad. But that's what we had to deal with. The Mets had a 12-game losing streak. It was absolutely awful. Their pitching, sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad. The back half of the rotation is absolutely horrible. The first half, you get away. You have, Freddie Peralta, who was supposed to be the ace, and he's been pretty good. He's been more good than bad. And then you have Nolan McLean right behind him. It seems like every single one of his starts is must-watch TV. And then after that, you have Clay Holmes, who's been a very pleasant surprise. And the fact that he was a former reliever and now he's going 7 innings in games is very impressive. So we love Clay Holmes over here. We're very thankful for him. But once you get past those three, this team absolutely takes a nosedive. And so now that they've lost 12 in a row and they have the second worst record in the National League East and the NL as a whole, where do we go from here? Where is this team headed? Now, I don't want to say all of it, but a decent reason why the Mets were struggling as much as they did was because they didn't have Juan Soto, who hurt himself running the bases. And then he finally came back, and now the Mets are winning again. And I swear to God, on the same day that Juan Soto comes back, now Francisco Lindor is out, and he hurt himself running the bases too, and he has a calf injury, and it's apparently really serious. He's on the IL, but he'll probably be on it for quite a bit. So Francisco Lindor, who was supposed to be this team's captain, everyone was begging and pleading for him to be the captain of this team a few years ago now is going to miss significant time. And I don't think that that's necessarily the worst news ever. Like, I mean, I'm by no means celebrating the injury of Francisco Lindor, but when you look at it, you take a step back and look at it. Francisco Lindor has caused a lot of problems. He has been involved in multiple rifts in the clubhouse. He had beef with Jeff McNeil after he promised Jeff McNeil a car after winning the batting title in I think 2022, and he never ended up getting it from him. It was a huge issue in the clubhouse, and now there's been reports that him and Juan Soto don't really get along. So there's some public beef going on in the Mets clubhouse these last handful of seasons, and Francisco Lindor has been at the helm of all of them. So it kind of makes you wonder if he's part of the problem. I know he's like the best player on the team, but he doesn't seem to get along well with a lot of his teammates. And now also we're used to Francisco Lindor struggling in April. It is what it is. We started booing him early in his career when he first got here because it was yet another player that signs with the Mets and immediately starts sucking. But then, he warmed himself up to the fans. His peak came in 2024 when he hit that grand slam against the Phillies in the NLDS, and we ended up beating them and advancing to the NLCS at Citi Field, which was the first postseason round that was clinched in front of Mets fans at Citi Field. So that was a cool moment. We'll always be indebted to him for that. But there is no doubt that this season kind of feels a little bit different for Francisco Lindor because, I mean, he is struggling obviously at the plate, but he has not looked good at all. Even defensively, he's going. There was a ball that was hit to the right side of second base, to the second base side of the second base bag, and instead of Francisco going to second base and trying to receive the flip from Marcus Simeon and turn a double play, he chases after the ball, and so he's behind the base, and then Marcus Simeon has to run to second base and step on the bag and get the out, and they don't get the double play because Francisco Lindor doesn't know what he's doing. That's not the only mental lapse that Francisco Lindor has had this season. He also famously didn't know how many outs there were in a game. He got picked off right in front of Juan Soto against the Cardinals in a game where Juan Soto hit a home run in that at bat, in the next at bat, and the Mets only the Mets lost that game 2-1 in extra innings because of Francisco Lindor getting picked off. If he stays on first base, Juan Soto hits that home run, the Mets win 2-1. They go home winners, and they win another game. But because Francisco Lindor got picked off, they didn't end up winning that game. And there's just a number of just boneheaded mistakes that Francisco Lindor has made. So I'm certainly not, with the way that this season is going, I think the season's over already. I'm not gonna miss Francisco Lindor. And one of the reason why I'm not gonna miss him is this sets up a very unique opportunity for the Mets. So now that Francisco Lindor is no longer manning shortstop, Bo Bichette, one of our biggest offseason acquisitions, famously is playing third base out of position. He's never played there before. And now with Francisco Lindor on the injured list, now Bo Bichette can move to short. And now that opens up a spot for Brett Beatty to be the everyday third baseman. And now he's going to be able to get everyday reps at third base and have the opportunity to really show that he belongs in this league, in this lineup, and on this team because he's obviously struggled a lot this season, but he's also, he hasn't really played a whole lot of third. He's played some first base, he's played left field, he's played right field. They're trying to find a spot for Brett Beatty, but because you paid all these guys all this much money, like Bo Bichette's getting paid a bunch of money to play third. You're paying Marcus Simeon a bunch of money to play second base, and Jorge Polanco, who's also on the injured list, you paid him a bunch of money to play first base. So those are three infield spots that Brett Beatty can't play. Brett Beatty was never going to play second base, I don't believe. But then you have Juan Soto in left field. Then you have Carson Benj, who made the team on opening day, and in right field. And you paid Luis Robert a bunch of money to be in center field. So there's no space on this team for Brett Beatty when this team is fully healthy. Now, I don't want to say thankfully, but now that the team is not fully healthy, first base and third base are now open. So you can put Brett Beatty at third base. And now, with Lindor going on the shelf, now the Mets have called up Ronnie Mauricio again. He's been up and down. He's never really gotten his footing in the major leagues, but that's because he's never really had consistent playing time. He made his major league debut in 2023 and he hasn't played a full season of Major League Baseball yet. He's only played like a couple dozen, like 50, 60 games, a couple of seasons. He hasn't put together a full 162 because there's never any room for him on the team. And I feel like this Lindor injury sets up a really good opportunity for all of these guys to get more playing time. Polanco is hurt at first base. Boom, you put Mark Vientos at first, or you DH him if you don't want to play him at first. Then you can slide Brett Beatty over at third, or if you want to put Mauricio at third, you can put Beatty at first, or if you want to put Bo Bichette at third and let Ronnie Mauricio try and field his natural position of shortstop, you can do that as well. So obviously, while this team is seemingly a dumpster fire despite having won their last two games, there is some part of this team that's at least worth being hopeful for. Now, why I think this team is as bad as it is, I came into the season not thinking that the Mets were going to make the playoffs. I saw that the team that the Mets had last year, the one that missed the playoffs, and they got rid of all the good guys that weren't part of the problem. So I thought naturally this team wasn't going to make the playoffs. And now we're at the end of April and they already have a 12-game losing streak. And no team in the history of Major League Baseball has lost 12 games in a row and still made the playoffs. So as of right now, I am vindicated and correct in my opinion and prediction of how this season was going to go. I saw a lot of preseason predictions and power rankings having the Mets like a top 10, top 5 team, the Mets being one of the World Series favorites, and then they pull off a 12-game losing streak and they're one of the worst teams in baseball. So I guess that just goes to show you that the national media has no idea what they're talking about, and maybe you should listen to fans that watch the team all the time and know what the hell they're talking about. But why I think the Mets ended up losing 12 games in a row obviously comes down to this lineup. This lineup is terrible. Now that Juan Soto is back, I don't think there's no reason why he should hit another home run the rest of the season. He shouldn't get another base hit the rest of the season. Just intentionally walk him. And now that Francisco Lindor is going to miss possibly multiple months, there's no reason why Juan Soto should ever have to take the bat off of his shoulder if you're an opposing team. Just walk Juan Soto. Don't even think about pitching to him. and let the rest of these 8 guys try and beat you. Bo Bichette is a professional hitter. He takes good at bats. He came up clutch, and he had his biggest hit as a Met with the 3-run double against the Twins in the final game of the series that ended up winning the game. That was his moment. So I'm happy for him. I think that he's going to end up doing well. Luis Robert is a guy who's coming off 2 bad seasons in a row. He played for a Chicago White Sox team that wasn't good when he was there. And a lot of people who are trying to hype up this signing was saying that he was in Chicago. He's not in that place anymore. He's with the Mets. He's with a good team. He's going to be better. He's going to be more focused, and he's going to be more motivated. He's going to be better overall. And now that the Mets have lost 12 in a row and are in a position where teams have never made the playoffs in the position that the Mets are currently in, it makes you think, is he going to regress? Is he going to just take his money, take a couple of swings and go home? Is this going to be the same Luis Robert that we saw the last 2 seasons? So I'm interested to see his effort level and his productivity, because he had a great year 3 years ago. Last 2 years have been terrible. And he was one of the main offseason acquisitions in this lineup. So I'm not too thrilled about him. I'm not too high on him. Jorge Polanco injured a lot. He had some clutch moments for Seattle in the postseason last year. But again, he's a guy who's never played first base, and he's replacing a guy who has the most home runs in the history of our franchise. So very big shoes to fill, not feeling confident about him. And then we have a bunch of what I like to consider quadruple A players. That consists of Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, and to a certain extent, Francisco Alvarez as well. These are guys that will, you send them down to AAA in Syracuse, and they'll hit like 400. They'll hit like 10 home runs a game, and they're going to look like the second coming of Barry Bonds. And then the moment that you call them up to Queens and put them in high pressure situations and packed stadiums and meaningful at bats and playing against professional pitchers who are throwing 100 miles an hour, then all of a sudden they come down to earth. They're not as bad. They're still serviceable. They're still decent, but they're not at the superstar level that they are in AAA. So they might just be some of the best minor leaguers you've ever have seen, but when you put them on a major league field, then they don't produce as much. And like I'm still trying to chase that high of 2024 postseason Mark Vientos. He was absolutely insane that year, that 1 month. And I'm still trying to tap into that. I still hope that he has that in him somewhere, because it hasn't been anywhere. It wasn't anywhere last season, and it hasn't been there this season. And one of the reasons why this team is so bad is they're just they just do dumb things, like Mark Vientos running through the stop sign that his third base coach puts up. He ends up getting thrown out at home by a mile. Juan Soto ends up getting picked off in a tie game. You can't have that. And probably the most egregious example was when in the most recent game against the Twins, Huascar Braziban, who just gave up the game-tying grand slam in the bottom of the the top of the eighth inning. This was a game that the Mets led 7-2. It's now 7-7 because of really because of Craig Kimbrell loading the bases, and then Huascar Braziban, giving up a grand slam, which his numbers this year are kind of misleading. He has an ERA under 1, which is fantastic, but he's let in half the inherited runners that he's faced this year. He's let them in to score. So while he doesn't allow any earned runs that are, directly credited to him, he lets everyone else's runners in. So then their numbers get inflated, but not his. But so Waskar Brazaban is in the dugout. He's waiting to come out for another inning, and then the lights turn off, and Devin Williams does his intro, and he comes in from the bullpen in right field, and he's trotting to the pitcher's mound. He's coming into the game, except Waskar Brazaban crosses the foul line first, and by major league rule, now he has to face at least one batter. So then Devin Williams, who we'll get to him in a second, he has to go back to the bullpen, and then Waskar Brazaban faces another batter. He gets an out, and then Devin Williams has to reset, regroup, and then come in. And Devin Williams has been absolutely terrible, and it's actually crazy because we witnessed the death of a man on national television when Pete Alonso hit that home run in the wild card series against the Brewers. It broke Devin Williams, and he never recovered from it. Last year, he had the worst season of his career in the Bronx, and this season, he's been just as terrible. His ERA is over 10. His last 3 starts have been terrible, and so what does Carlos Mendoza do? He decides to bring in Devin Williams and give him another chance, and to his credit, it ends up working. Devin Williams ends up shutting the door. He doesn't get a save. He ends up being the winning pitcher. However, it was a 3-run lead. He gave up a run, and then there were runners on second and third with 2 outs, and just a base hit would have tied the game, and the Mets would have blown at least a 3+ run lead for the second time in that game. So this is just terrible. A bad decision to bring in Devin Williams. He almost blows it, but he doesn't. And that's where I lie with Carlos Mendoza. He's part of the issue, and he made a terrible decision. Carson Bench had a great game. He went 2 for 3, hit a deep double off of the wall. He hit a home run. He's gonna face the lefty coming in, Anthony Banda of the Twins. And what does Carlos Mendoza do? He decides to take him out for a pinch hitter, and he puts in Tommy Pham, who hasn't had a hit all season. I'm not even joking. That is not an exaggeration. Now, again, in the end, it ended up working because Tommy Pham drew a walk. It lowered the bases for Bo Bichette, who ended up hitting the go-ahead 3-run double to give the Mets the win. But still, Carlos Mendoza does dumb stuff, and he's, whether or not he deserves to be fired, whether or not it's his fault, he does deserve to get canned, and he probably will end up losing his job before the end of the season, probably before the All-Star break if it doesn't happen within the next couple of days or weeks. But I mean, it really starts with David Stearns. David Stearns has done a terrible job of assembling this team, and he really got pennies on the dollar for all of the great talent that he let walk out of the door. I don't see this season turning around. I think this Mets team is cooked. However, hopefully with the injury to Francisco Lindor, it allows some of the younger players to come up and flourish. That does it for the first part of this Kevin Blekicki show. We went a little bit longer than I should have, but we will be back after these messages. And we are back with more of the Kevin Blekicki show. We will be transitioning into talking about women's basketball, women's college basketball, specifically the South Carolina Gamecocks, because Dawn Staley did it again. She did it again. She had another fantastic offseason of rebuilding and retooling this team. I don't know how she does it. Now, if you've been online the last 2 seasons, you would think that Dawn Staley is washed and she can't possibly keep fielding together these good teams. And the last 2 seasons, South Carolina made it all the way to the national championship game, and they got blown out the last 2 years. They've made it 3 times in a row. They won, in 2024, and then they lost the last 2 in blowout fashion. And because we live in this online cesspool where everyone demands excellence from everyone at every moment of the day, people were quick to pounce on Dawn Staley and call her washed and say that her time is up. But clearly it's not, because plenty of women in college want to play for Dawn Staley, and she's kind of making it the point where South Carolina is the premier destination to play women's college basketball. She's done it again. She poached Jordan Lee from Texas. Leaves Texas and Vic Schaefer, and she's coming to Dawn Staley in South Carolina, despite the fact that Texas beat South Carolina 2 times out of 3 last year, including absolutely destroying us in the SEC title game. It wasn't even close. Right from the get-go, they just absolutely destroyed us. But she wants to play for Dawn Staley, and now she's going to be able to have that opportunity. She's been playing for 2 years. She, was primarily a bench player in her freshman season, but last year was her kind of breakout season. She started 38 of 39 games, averaging 31.7 minutes, 13 points, 2 rebounds, 2.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, field goal percentage of 42%, 3-point percentage of 34.8%. Not great, not terrible either, but she's also not going to be a like primary scorer. She's not going to be asked to be doing too much. She's going to probably have a role of like a Tanaya Latson, who's a good scorer, but isn't going to be asked to do too much. And when you come to South Carolina, it is implied and probably reinforced that the women take significantly less roles, and they put their egos aside for the greater good. And that's what makes them so successful. They're always a team, and it's a place where everyone wants to come and no one wants to leave. Raven Johnson could have left South Carolina at any point and tried to, better her career. And she decided to stay at South Carolina. And, she struggled in the beginning part of her career, and she ended up improving so much that she ended up being a top 10 pick in the WNBA draft this year. Now, granted, Malaysia Fawali transferred, but the jury is still out on the trajectory of her career. But South Carolina seems to be the place to be, and Dawn Staley is creating a culture where everyone wants to be a part of it, because no player transferred this season from South Carolina. She didn't lose a single player to the transfer portal. These women are bought into Dawn Staley and her vision for this program, and it's pretty remarkable to see. I mean, you see players get poached and come and go all the time, but Dawn Staley in South Carolina kind of preserves some of what I always loved about college sports, was it, being more about the coach and creating a culture and a bunch of talented young players developing under a coach and putting their egos aside for the greater good and trying to make it a to the next level. It still has that professional feel, because there's the women in it are so talented, but also there's an amateur sense to it because they're still trying to get to the higher level. So shout out to Dawn Staley for poaching Jordan Lee, going staying in the SEC but going to South Carolina, and also signing Olivia Edwards and having her commit to South Carolina. She decommitted from Tennessee. It really feels like I just talked about earlier in the show about how Pete Alonso's home run against Devin Williams might have finished his career. It feels like Camila Cardozo's 3 against Tennessee in the SEC tournament years ago ended the Tennessee Volunteer Lady Vols program, because they are just absolutely in shambles right now. But Olivia Big O Edwards is a 5+ star recruit, and she is going to make this team even taller. She's 6'3", and the average height of South Carolina coming into the 26-27 season is 6'2". There's only one player on the team that is shorter than 6 feet tall, and that is or the Mighty Mouse, Maddie McDaniel. Everyone else is over 6 feet, and this team is going to be strong defensively. You're gonna have big bodies everywhere, and I can't wait. I've seen a lot. I've been blessed since going to South Carolina and becoming a fan of this team. I don't know what struggle is. I've never seen a bad South Carolina team. I've never even seen an above average South Carolina team. I've never even seen a great South Carolina team. I've only seen the best of the best. It has been nothing but sunshines and rainbows since I've become a fan. You can call me a bandwagon. I mean, I went to the school. I pay student loans every month, so I can't be a bandwagon. But from the time that I've been here, it's been nothing but great times. And even though that we got blown out in back-to-back national championships, Dawn Staley is, in my opinion, the best coach in the country right now, and I wouldn't want her coaching anywhere else. Now, that she might be going to the WNBA's Philadelphia expansion team down the road if that ends up coming to fruition. But for now, she's ours. She's not going anywhere. And I can't believe that she is the head coach of my favorite women's basketball team. And there's a lot of reasons to be excited for the team because you have all of these new incoming players like Kelsey Andrews and Kaylee Wynn and Jersey Robinson, all these great recruits, but you're also returning Tessa Johnson, Ayla McDowell, Maddie McDaniel, Joyce Edwards getting another year under her belt. Jordan Lee's now transferring over. Agot McKeer, after she had a fantastic March Madness, now she has another season under her belt. I'm very much looking forward to seeing her development. Then you have Alicia Tornabees, who came in the middle of the season, right as SEC play started in January. So she's gonna have a full off season. So I'm really excited to see the progression of Alicia Tornabees. Hopefully she can spread the floor out a little bit more, hit more threes, be more physical, maybe bulk up a little bit and be more of a defensive presence. We're also getting Chloe Kitts back from injury. She missed all of last season. Ashlyn Watkins, I believe, is coming back. I can't confirm that 100%, but I'm pretty sure she's coming back. And then you just add, Olivia Edwards to this. So now they have 4 players on their team that can dunk. You have Ashlyn Watkins, Alicia Tornabees. I saw Agot McKeer dunk, and now you have Big O, Olivia Edwards. Man, this team has crazy depth, and I am so excited to see them play. I can't wait for the season to start, and I think we're gonna have another amazing season, and it's gonna be scary hours for all the teams that have to play South Carolina this year. But we're gonna briefly touch on the Jets part of the NFL draft to close out this show. And look, I can't sit here and lie to you and say that I really care about what goes on during this weekend because I am so just broken and distraught with the Jets. I mean, the whole Aaron Rodgers situation just ended up breaking me. We finally get a quarterback. We get a Hall of Fame quarterback. A vet, sure he's 40, but we finally get a good quarterback. The ceiling, hopefully the expectation is that we win the Super Bowl, but you think that we're going to at least make the playoffs. And on the first drive of his Jets career, he snaps his Achilles. He's out for the year. And then the year after that was also a mess, and it never panned out. And so we're sitting here with the longest playoff drought in North American sports. And our idea of getting a quarterback after allegedly having our franchise guy in Justin Fields and trying and starting out 0-7 which resulted us in getting the number 2 pick in the draft. Our idea of getting a quarterback in the offseason is trading for a guy who is already on our team and we let go because he wasn't any good, and he's coming back 1 year removed after leading his team to the worst record in the NFL. So we had the second worst record in the NFL, and we traded for the quarterback who led his team to the worst record in the NFL. Big brain stuff going on over at Florham Park. So, I mean, I'm done with the Jets. I'm done having expectations. I'm really just I might tune into a little bit of the preseason games if I can, but I'll never make the mistake of ever having expectations for this team ever again because they'll just absolutely step on your heart and break you. But the Jets did actually have 3 first-round picks. They started the night with 2, then they traded up late in the 3rd round. But their first pick was David Bailey, an edge rusher out of Texas Tech. Apparently, he is the best pass rusher in the draft right now. There were other bigger names, but apparently this is the guy. This is the guy that they wanted. And we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't end up being like a Darko Milicic situation where it's like the 2003 NBA draft is an all-timer and then we're just sitting here with a bust. We'll see how he ends up doing. Then the Jets' next pick was at 16. They got Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon. I saw his highlights. I see the way that these guys talk about him. They say that he's an athletic freak, so hopefully he's able to be the tight end that this Jets team has always missed. We've never really had a legit like superstar game changer tight end. So hopefully he can be that for us. And then we ended up trading back into the first round at pick number 30, and we picked Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. And if that name sounds familiar to you guys, he's the guy who made that crazy catch in the back of the end zone last year against Penn State that preserved Indiana's perfect season en route to a national championship. So hopefully, Omar Cooper Jr. can bring his uh, championship expertise and bring it into the NFL because God knows that the Jets could use some guys who actually know how to win. So we'll see how these picks end up panning out. These drafts are always a crapshoot. You're doing a lottery ticket pretty much. I'm not expecting much from the Jets this upcoming season. I'm just kind of over it. I hope they do all right, but I'm done having any sort of expectations after Aaron Rodgers absolutely just ripped my heart out. But that does it for this edition of the Kevin Blekicki Show. If you like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Make sure you follow me on social media on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Kevin Blekicki. And we'll see you again next week. I promise. It's been a while since I've done a Kevin Blekicki Show, but I promise we'll have another one next week.